There are some games that aren't bad, don't do enough good to be great. Good examples of this are the games based off of Titan's Adventures, the Magic Quest game, and another game series that fits it well is known as Forces. The problem CT Special Forces has is that for all the attempts at being the handheld equivalent of the next Contra or Metal Slug, it does really nothing for you to remember it. More or less one of these games that are very much forgotten gems that find in the wild that you should go try out. You just shouldn't expect it to set the world on fire. So, let's see how good game actually is. The development is about as typical as the company's track. The game was developed by Light and Shadow Productions, or LSP, published by Hip Games, and was released on January 2nd, 2000. CT Special Forces really only had 3 or 4 games in the series and was considered dead until 2015, the release of CT Special Forces Fire for Effect. Who is Light and Shadow Productions, you may ask? Upon research, well, their track record pretty well mediocre. According to IGN, they were a French development team that developing, publishing games, interactive, and since IGN provided me really ain't more information on their site, according to Moby Games, they were acquired by Hip Games and was absorbed in Interactive Europe February 4. Their development track record holds such 3 Special Forces games for GBA, including the original called Back Trenches and Navy Op. Other games they have developed: Extreme Ghostbusters Color, the PC, PS2, and GBA version Sitting Duck, along with not the most villain game developed team out. Unless you're a fan of Dream Ghostbusters, they were, they never really developed standout title. Games, they aren't the most reliable published. More of their games have been either Europe only or cancelled rather than a North American release. If you don't include those cancelled or port only games, I'm not including versions. For example, Dolan may have been released for PC, PS2, and Xbox. The version was canceled. Worst was that game where the GBA version was released and the console canceled. Games really knows how to pick them out, guys. Graphics are decent at. It looks a fair bit better than the Neo Geo Pocket version of Metal Slug, and oddly enough, it has a very similar art style to those games. That said, it really isn't saying much. GBA stronger hardware than the Neo Geo Pocket, and it really should be expected. Still, fundamentally, it looks solid. The problem arises when you go into a level-by-level deal. There's a total of 12 levels, I assume, and they are broken into 4 different areas. The problem is that the levels, textures are recycled and boring going from one level to another. Sure, the different gameplay styles break up the monotony. Level looks like they use a total of 3 to 5 different colors. This significantly takes away from the quality and takes it within a step away from being mediocre. The audio is very surface. It's not going to set the world on fire. It does its job. It's very appropriate for the action on screen, but it just simply lacks something to take it to the next level from being, decent to serviceable audio, being great. Gameplay wants so much. Why would we program the game like this? The game is broken into style. First gameplay mode you have is the 2D action platforming. You go from point A to point B, jumping on platforms and killing enemies. These levels are done fairly well. You get multiple weapons such as shotguns, rocket launchers, etc., and are encouraged to conserve ammo for trapped areas full of enemies, bosses. Plus, you can switch between a weapon at a time. So, that's a nice little. My problem is that getting shots off easy enough. Nothing feels as good as other genres. My only real problem is that there are only certain areas you can drop off from, even though there's a platform below them. The game also has fall damage, and at times can get so whiny how you go about finishing levels that feel like you have a back aim or playing the levels. This is the kind of thing that makes me feel like I'm playing a game from the NES rather than a high quality GBA. The second gameplay mode is the 2D shooter. These levels play like Xevious or other 2D shooters in the style. You can shoot forward and drop bombs on land units, destroy them. Functions okay, at times feels jerk, not to mention that levels all they use 1, maybe colors aside from them. The second gameplay mode is the 2D shooter level. These levels play like Xevious or other 2D shooters in the style. You can shoot forward and drop bombs on land units to destroy them. Functions okay, but just feels at times jerk, not to mention that levels all just look like they use 1 color aside building. Okay, 1 maybe 2 for the actual landscape around those buildings. Third is a first-person virtual cop style game. Levels, you have enemies in a first-person snipe. I'm not going to lie. Controls like D-pad doesn't ever work well with the style of game. Moving your sniper rifle is an absolute hassle. It only adds to the aggravation of not having a steady hand and leads to long before they did. This turns these levels into a total crapshoot where it's random whether these levels or not. I know it's supposed to be realistic. First-person shooters never ever really worked with a GBA setup. Doom was okay, but you didn't really need to be precise to get kills in that. It just proves that you can't make a good first-person any precision system on a system that only has a D-pad. So what we have here is a game that trips over its own and never really has all the right elements. Congratulations, CT Special. You have become the Chicago Bears BA. Not to say there's no element game game, and the same goes for the Chicago Bears. Not like there's, elements that aren't good on that Bears. It's just the game. Oh, it always seems like every gameplay element has either a good concept, decent execution, but lacks an X factor, or has an idea someone didn't get the memo on how to make style, or even didn't realize it didn't work to the hardware's setup. Overall, CT Special Forces from top to bottom, it does nothing good enough. It's an okay game, and you find it for $5 or less, but any more, 10 would be pushing it. It needs a lot, I think there's fun to be had if you have like a weekend and you need something simple on GBA, and you already burned through your Metal Slug and Contra 3 on the GBA, and you want to try something that's not name brand. I think the platforming levels are, decent enough. 2D shooter levels, need a little bit of work, and the sniper view, had some ambition behind it, back in 2004, but it's total schlock. In general, I think you'll have some fun with it. It's just that don't expect it to set the world on fire, or even be good, or even personally, I give it a 6 out of 10.